Hello, welcome to the June 2019 monthly meeting in Zoom of the Ukulele Instructors International Group. Every month we've been meeting right around middle of the month on a Saturday, 5 o'clock East Coast time, East Coast in the US and in North America. And today's topic is on rhythm. How do we teach rhythm? And also strumming patterns, everything related to rhythm. And today I have Lindsay Higgs from the UK to show us how he teaches rhythm. And I also have a little bit to say. And then later on, if Lan in Mexico joins us, I'll be introducing him as well. So here, let me just briefly show you the slides, teaching of rhythm, and some of the issues and concerns, time signatures, count it, I call it count it, tap it, feel it, play it, and Lindsay will talk more, and this is what I have today. All right, over to you, Lindsay. Oh.
Hi, Anne. Yeah, I was just going to talk through how I teach rhythm. The sort of inspiration from this actually came from a Cajon booklet by the Australian Percussive Arts Society, and I like their approach. So I sort of modified it and worked on how we could use it for the ukulele. So what I do is to start off with, I've my resources. It's lucky I don't teach IT. This is my resource. But first of all, that's what I do with my students. So I get I draw a little grid, and I've just got the numbers of beats above it. I keep it really simple, and I just get them tapping 4 beats in the bar, or I just get them to play a chord, and just get used to the idea that as the music goes along, they play a chord on the beat. After they've got the feel of that, I start looking at how we could add an extra chord or clap in after each one. So here you'd have 1, 2, and 3, 4, and I just get them used to the rhythm first of all, and then once they've got that, they've got used to that, I start looking at how we can sort of introduce reading music with us, or reading rhythms. So I think this is quite good because it makes sense with the quavers of why they're joined together, so you can actually see they belong to the same beat. So it's the rhythm we've just done. I'll get them to clap 1, 2, and 3, 4, and then after that I get them thinking about what they're doing with their strumming. I've used the old-fashioned violin system for the up and down strokes. My little way of remembering it is that looks very vaguely like an N. So if you think the word down ends with an N, that's a downstroke. It's actually comes from the shape of the violin bow. And then an upstroke is a V. And I tell my students that the Romans used to write U's a bit like a V. So we remember the upstroke that way. And then this is just the same pattern, and they're just getting used to the downstroke. And then they're naturally moving their hand up to start the next downstroke. So I just show them that's what they're doing. They're playing a downstroke, and then it's in brackets at the moment because they're just bringing their hand up to get ready for the next downstroke. And I get them to move the hand up and down nice and evenly. And then once we're actually putting the downstrokes in, we can then take the brackets away to show them where they would be playing an upstroke and a downstroke on the chord. And then eventually, of course, you don't need to write the ones with the brackets, but then they've got used to the idea of playing on the beat, and then what upstrokes and downstrokes are. And then eventually, so it's a bit messy, you can expand it. So if you wanted to start introducing semiquavers, you could just have, and I've used the notation system that they use. I think Berkeley use it, the 1 E-ander for each nest of semiquavers. So there we've got 4 semiquavers and a crotchet, and semiquavers and crotchets. And then after that, once I've got used to that I just use sort of subdivisions. And then, for example, I was teaching someone about 12/8 the other day. So I use exactly the same system, but we just, I haven't done the diagram for it, but we just had a set of boxes of sets of 3 boxes. And then we could look at which of the boxes they'd be playing on. So that's basically how I get them going with rhythm, really.
That's interesting that you use the violin bowing rather than arrows.
Yes, yeah.
Was there a reason why you decided to do that?
I think it's because I come from a plectrum guitar background, and that's actually the notation that's very often used. But it's an interesting point because it doesn't logically make sense for the ukulele. It probably up and down arrows, and I do occasionally use the up and down arrows, and you can I'll just quickly, it's quite useful because you can then basically when you have quavers and crotchets, you can actually turn the stems of the notes into arrows, up and down arrows. So I do that sometimes as well. So I do use both, but it's just slightly old-fashioned from the plectrum guitar.
No, that's great. I missed the bit when you were saying, I mean, the N for down makes a lot of sense, but when you said V, what did you?
I said that with the Romans, I think, used to use a V instead of a U. Well, that's
For upstroke. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah,
That's what I tell my students anyway. I'm
yeah.
sure there's some classicists there that might disagree.
I use D for down, U for
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
The reason I deliberately mentioned down and the down arrow and up
yeah.
arrow is when they start looking at tab, it's very confusing because
Yes,
down, especially for low
yes, yeah.
tune ukulele, it's the opposite. So, yeah.
Well, that's something to sort of think about really in my own teaching. Just
Yeah,
but it's knowing that you've got 2 or 3 different approaches, I suppose. But
that's right. Now, just now I saw that Mark was sharing something. Mark, are you still there? Did you want to chime in on anything? Because I stopped your sharing.
No, no, sorry. You can hear me okay?
Yes?
Yeah, my phone's using too much battery on the video, so I've turned off video. I was trying to, while walking, trying to share that. We've got a similar document that I found somewhere on the net years ago. And did it share or not, what I was doing?
It did share, but now you have something else that you're sharing.
Okay, I'll see if I can, no,
Okay.
I'm not sharing, that's just my,
Oh, that's you. Okay. Okay.
there you go. Now, I don't know if the other share thing, I'll see if it comes up.
Yeah, I've seen that before online.
This share via, oh no, that's not it. Sorry, this is a real pain.
Yeah. Just just to say, I found all sorts of useful things like that online. But
That
I
thing?
like, yeah, that one. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's essentially what you're doing, Lindsay, isn't it? Except with
Yes,
down.
yeah.
And I use this in a beginner's context, in a beginner's workshop. My approach is I can easily, like at beginners, I can teach the mechanics of where to put your fingers for chord shapes, but I think strumming is the hardest thing to teach, rhythm, and that's because it's much more about the visceral relationship that we have with rhythm. That it needs to be, you need to feel it. It's something that's very, very difficult to teach in a mechanical sort of way, but nevertheless, we need to start somewhere. So this, I always say, well, this teaches the discipline and the technique that you need to strike the ukulele, if you like. Sorry, it's a bit windy. But for you to really get rhythm, you just need to play with others. So it's a little bit of a, you know, a little bit of a business thing as well. Well, you know, if you really want to learn how to play, you've got to come to classes. You know.
Yes. Yeah.
Does that? Can you hear me okay? And does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So this strumming pattern. I also saw a really somebody, you know, those clickbait sort of videos. Somebody shared something. He said, never do strumming patterns. Strumming patterns are awful. And then the guy goes on to say, it's all about rhythm. And so what ukulele culture does very often is say, see number 7 on there, that's Latin strums. Oh, and people go, now, so that's a great song. Which strumming pattern should I use? And invariably people sort of do the number 7, you know, which a lot of people call, oh, it's the ukulele strumming pattern. And that's just wrong. You know, it just, as a musician, I've got to feel it, and then I've got to fit in with what others are playing. But as a ukulele group, that's really, really difficult. I mean, it's nigh on impossible, really.
Yeah, we call it what? The calypso or island strum. And then once you learn that strum, people complain they can't get out of it, right? It's
That's
like,
right.
yeah, they want to know, can you teach me something else? I won't do it again.
That's right. And that's why on that sheet, I think it's number 11, it's the offbeat strum. So it's on the offbeat, and the only way that you can effectively do that is if you've got a bass keeping the onbeat.
Yeah.
In
Yes.
your session.
I saw that link somewhere. Maybe you could email or send in chat the link to that you just shared. I was just going to say most of it is the same for all 4 measures, right? But the few at the bottom were different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't. We've got it on our website, so I'll share that to you when I get home. Which
Okay, no problem. Yeah. Okay. Great. So
What I'm seeing, just out of, you know, just to talk about up and down strokes and how you indicate them, and there's so much there's so much that we to share, and there's so much. It'd be really good to start thinking about how we all talk about things in a fairly standard way. I mean, obviously, you don't want kind of to homogenize ukulele playing, but having like a common vocabulary would be really useful, actually, wouldn't it? So we all more or less agree on how we notate up and down strokes, and how we notate rhythms and things. I think that might be a worthwhile project, but probably quite an involved project as well.
well, I think I got the ball rolling in my intro to music theory class. I got everyone to agree to use the eighth notes, quarter notes, and all that instead of your quavers and your semi-demi.
Yeah.
That's right. Good luck with that, because you know, the Americans and the English can't agree, and then in Australia we're caught between the two. So we use crotchets and minims and quavers, and then we go to America and it's different.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. So you know, you're not gonna win that one. I mean, you are in your own culture, but
are you saying New Zealand also uses quavers and crotchets?
They would. They're more English than us.
And what wondered Canada. Actually, Mark just came in from California. I always get Canada and California confused when I see CA, and so because we have a lot of people from Canada coming to our sessions. I wish Monica was here. I bet she uses eighth notes and quarter notes.
I think she probably does.
Yeah. I wonder how the divide came about. My goodness, yeah.
Oh, well, it's the same with improvise. Is it spelt with an S or a Z?
I don't know if any of you have heard of him, but there's a guy called Adam Neely who's a bass player, and he's done some really. I mean, he does a lot of videos about bass playing, and it's expanded into music theory. And he did a whole, little YouTube program, little online program about the difference between English and American, or
How do you spell his last name?
it's Neely. He's a bass player, and he came out with some really interesting sort of snippets of information that originally what we call a crotchet was written like a quaver, because crotchet is from like a crochet hook, which is what a quaver looks like. And he's just saying how illogical the whole, whichever system you use. And it's like, if you have quarter notes, what happens if you're playing in 3/4 time?
Right. Oh, okay. I get it. All right.
So, it's like, it's really interesting. I suppose either system, and a semi-breve, a breve is actually a short note. So a semi-breve is half of a short note, but that actually now lasts for 4 beats. It's so that as over time, all of the notes had logical names, but over time it all got changed anyway, and it's
That's crazy. That's wonderful, though.
it is. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'll take a look.
Yeah.
All right. So welcome, Mark. We're
Thank you.
okay.
Sorry I'm late.
No, that's all right.
I just want to say that my ukulele group, the San Francisco Ukulele Rebellion, held its first in-person meeting since February 2020 today. We were in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco from 11 to 1 Pacific time, and I just got back from that.
Did you record it?
No, some people took pictures. I meant to make a video, and I was just busy doing other things. We had 30 some odd people there, which is the biggest in-person group we've ever had. So
wow, that must have
something
been
happened during the pandemic.
It must have been exhilarating. Were they standing, or do they bring chairs, or how?
We met in an area that had portable benches that are just there, and nobody uses them when there's nothing going on. It's near a band shell, and the benches are for the band shell. So we made a big square. We tried to socially distance. We decided to dispense with the masks, and the biggest problem we had was hearing each other in such a big space.
Yeah.
But we did, and it was, interestingly enough, the takeaway for this meeting from that was that people are so accustomed to hearing each other on Zoom, where they only hear the leader, that when we put 30 people together, for the first 3 or 4 songs, they had trouble keeping the tempo together.
Wow, that's interesting.
It took some effort. I actually conducted the first 2 songs so that people could start to listen to each other again, which is something that hasn't happened to them in 16 months.
So did everybody have their own songbooks, song sheets?
We used the daily ukulele books.
Oh, okay.
Which we've been using. We were using them before the pandemic.
That's really heavy on the portable, foldable stands, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm buying an iPad next week, and I'm going to make sure that I download the 2 books onto my iPad.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. So are you going to continue doing in person from now on?
We're going to do them once a month outdoors until it's safe to do them indoors.
Okay.
We used to have an indoor space, which is currently unable to accommodate us, although all COVID restrictions have been lifted here in San Francisco.
How many of your folk are? Hi, Mark. I'm Mark from Australia. How many of your folk are injected? Vaccinated?
Oh, we required vaccination as a prerequisite to showing up. So everybody in our meeting was vaccinated. In the Bay Area, we have about a 75% vaccination rate.
Wow.
Which made it. What's happened in California is that they suspended most COVID protocols on the 15th of June because the state itself is about 60% vaccinated. And I was talking to people who drove in from Sacramento for this meeting, friends of mine, who said that in Sacramento, the vaccination rate is only about 40%, and people are still wearing their masks. In San Francisco, where the vaccination rate is a lot higher, people are, for the most part, not wearing their masks outdoors, and a lot fewer of them are wearing their masks indoors.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. I think the epidemiology of ukulele playing will be very different as time goes on. Of course, we're in a very different situation here in Australia. We've been pretty much back to normal for 6 months now. No masks, no social distancing at Eucasters. And I was saying before, we've got a mild panic at the moment because 2 people have been infected in Sydney, but we should get a clamp on that. So it just doesn't compare.
So have ukulele groups been meeting in person there?
Oh yeah, like we just had our first anniversary of being back. We had 3 months of not, or 4. And the vaccination is, because we haven't got the issue, we haven't really got COVID in Australia. The vaccination rates have been really down, but amongst our ukulele communities, vaccination is, like, I've only had mine the other day, my first one, but it's quite contentious amongst some people, and yeah, so it's a different situation, but it's going to be really interesting as time goes on.
Actually, you know, one of the topics that might be interesting for a future meeting is that of how do you, how do people situate themselves so you can get the best hearing possibility? I know when it's in person and it's indoors and we're not socially distanced, and if there's somebody with a microphone who's leading the group, it's not a big issue. But if we have the challenges of being outdoors, and you can't hear the mic, or maybe there's no microphone and there's no leader, like in your case, Mark, were you in a circle? Were you,
We were in a big square, and amplification is not permitted in the park. One person brought a headset, and we could hear her when she led her song. But it was, I think my biggest takeaway was that part of being in rhythm as a group is listening to everybody else. And you can't do that on Zoom. You only hear the leader. And if you're screwing up at home, nobody else hears you. And that was a challenge for the first few songs. We really had to get people remembering how to listen to other people when they played, and how to kind of fit what they thought the tempo was into what the leader was doing. And one of the things I always tell people when I lead a group anywhere is there are 2 things you can do. You can watch the leader's mouth to see when he or she is singing the words, and you can watch his strumming hand to kind of get a sense of the rhythm from that. And I had to remind people to do that because we're not on Zoom. And it was a challenge. It was one of the things I did not expect to have to deal with from a bunch of people who have been meeting regularly for the last 16 months. But it's a very different kind of meeting, and rhythm matters when you can hear each other.
Oh, totally. Last week we met in person, about 30 of us. It was a ukulele ladies picnic. And the host, who's a very experienced club leader, had laid out all the chairs in a semicircle facing the stage where there was a microphone. But because people didn't want to be baked by the sun, they shifted. So it was on one side, near the trees. So it became sort of long. And then I stood up to join the people in the back. At first I was in the front, so that because I wanted to stand up, I didn't want to sit down. So what happened, what you were saying, Mark, is that people were trying to listen to the leader in the front, but because like I sang quite loudly, I was in the back. Those in the middle would be confused. Do you listen to people in front or in the back? You get this effect, almost like a Doppler effect, where there was a lag, a very distinct lag. And I don't think this would have happened if we were in a semicircle or kind of, landscape rather than portrait view.
Well, what really helped is for the first couple of songs, once I realized there was a problem, I stopped playing. I stood up in the middle of the square and I just showed the beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I asked people to watch me. And, that helped.
Sorry, that's why we need a conductor. But then if everybody's just reading from their song sheet, they're not looking at you. So, all right. Well, shall we continue with the rhythm? And, yeah. All right. So I prepared something about rhythm. I taught 2 classes this week on rhythm. The first one was, Introduction to Music Theory. Just about everybody said they had issues with rhythm. They want to play with somebody else, but they can't feel or keep the beat, or they don't, they get off. And I told them that rhythm is the most important thing if you're playing with other people. 1 other person, 2 other person, everybody else, you have to get it. So I just introduced this. We accept it. We're going to use the US terminology because it relates to fractions. But I hadn't thought about the triplets, the 3/4 time and the other, how it gets confusing. And then explained, a little bit of this and counting. So try to use pictures. And this was interesting. So I said, let's count it, tap it, and feel it and say it. And I have a link to different rhythmic drills. And it was interesting because almost all of them did not hold long enough. For example, I say, okay, let me give you a demonstration. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and apple pie. Apple pie. Apple pie. Okay, so other people have to follow that. Ultimately, it's almost always, for example, when they do green apple, they would do green apple, green apple, green apple. Just ignore the rests. I see Mark nodding. Yeah, people don't count the rests. And they don't understand that it's very, very important. Another thing I noticed is that I said, you have to pretend you are a robot. So don't pronounce it the way you usually say. When I said apple pie, no, be a robot. Be apple pie. Apple pie. Really, and maybe one way is to hear it in your head. You go apple pie, and then in your head you also go apple pie. Then that would be long enough. Little things like apricot jelly, they'll go apricot jelly. I said, no, it's apricot jelly. Apricot jelly. So the 16th or 32nd, the shorter duration notes, it gets exaggerated to be shorter, and the longer duration notes gets exaggerated to be longer than written. So it becomes inaccurate. So then I talk about maths. So I talk about how it's important to do drills and exercises and think of it mathematically. So those left-brained folks like this because it's like, it makes so much sense, but the problem is how to translate that into actually playing it. It makes so much sense. You can't, and I said, you can't just read it, you need to feel it. So what I did in my other class, boot camp, I decided to introduce, this is what I usually do. I do 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so I tell them your right hand, your strumming hand has to be like a metronome, constantly going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And instead of playing these chords, I had them just muted. So they are doing, just a second. They're just doing, so down, So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Yeah, so, okay, let's just do it together. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and down, up, down, down, up, 3, 4, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So, and then I had them play this, and it turned out this is a well-known piece. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so it's Pat Benatar, hit me with your best shot. Except that is in the key of E, much more difficult. So by breaking it down, this sort of works. So it's more fun. So that's basically it. Any feedback?
I wanted to say that one of the biggest problems in Zoom meetings is people who do what I call running the stop sign, which is they don't appreciate the rests. They'll get to the end of a phrase in a song and then jump into the next one, even though there's usually, most pop songs, at the end of a phrase there's a period of rest. So they'll do green apple and then not count to 4 and then just start up with the next green apple. And it's incredibly frustrating because if we were meeting in person, we could, and I've done this before, we could stop the group and say, you know, you didn't put 4 beats in that measure. Let's count it out. 1 and 2 and 3. Oh, that's where the line ends, but there's also an and 4 and you have to wait to get to 1 to start the next measure. And it drives me crazy. There's this woman who is an incredible Beatles fanatic who does it to Beatles songs because she plays them differently than she must hear them. And you know, I don't know how you instill in a person a sense of rhythm who doesn't have one, except to sit next to them and count to 4 while they play.
Well, see, this is why playing together is so important, doing duets and everything and all that. Otherwise, it's your blind spot. You don't even know that you're not getting it, right? Yeah, I think it's all about listening as well, being able to hear what's going on.
I do think that it, I mean, like I said, it's very much about playing with others. I've shared our beginners repertoire page with you now, and that's got the strumming patterns on it. And if you want to do you have to have a bass, I reckon, for for it to sound okay. And if you want to get people, I call that the ukulele strum, I call it blancmange. You know, that sort of very loose, amorphous dessert. So we've got the blancmange strum going on. And so the best way for me to teach that person who's a complete reprobate when it comes to rhythm is do offbeat strums, is do a ska song or a reggae song. You've got a very specific rather than just dunga 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 dung. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, and what do you all think about, I often get a student who suddenly says, "Oh, just use the metronome." I don't think it's that, how do you call it? Playing with a metronome isn't that easy, actually. What do you all think about that?
I think private practice with a metronome is really useful, and certainly you can make quite rapid progress quickly. But one thing that didn't occur to me, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a drummer, and we were talking about things like like if you had I'm sorry, I use the American term, I was getting me confused, but you had like a dotted crotchet followed by a quaver and a dotted crotchet followed by a quaver. So you'd listen out for the metronome before you played the quaver. So it's listening out for the metronome to fill in gaps for like minims and things, or half notes, is it? I found that really useful, so I teach that now.
What about visual metronomes? Because I had two people who wanted to perform, but they were so used to having a metronome and they thought it would get in the way that maybe they should have a visual metronome so when they're performing they could see it.
I have an app that blinks. It's a metronome app, and it blinks on the first beat of every measure. But I've tried to use it, and it's too much information to process from too many sources sometimes. I mean, it's nice to have. It seems to work to have a conductor, which I was effectively just a visual metronome when I was doing this. I was just 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and that helps some people, and I think it helps get a group together. But I don't know for individual. See, the thing about metronomes is that it will teach you to maintain a steady tempo, but I don't think it will teach you to hear the rhythm of a song. And the point that Mark made is a good one, because we started today with Three Little Birds, and I basically played it. I played this. My uke is out of tune, but and people are always asking, well, what strum do you do with this? And some people will do the basic ukulele strum, down, down, up, down, up. Don't worry about a thing. Try doing that, and they'll use that for every song. And so I think the other issue about rhythm is remembering that the ukulele is a rhythm instrument. In its iteration in group playing, it started as a rhythm instrument. It replaced hitting sticks with sticks in Hawaiian music. And so people will say, well, what strum do you use here? And then they'll use the down, down, up strum. And I tell them what they need to do is listen to the song and then tap their finger along to it in a way that makes sense to their left brain.
Yeah, I wonder whether, this is what I do. I have a new class starting on Tuesday, hum and strum. So basically I said that the ukulele serves two purposes. Your fretting hand or your left hand, basically keeps you so that you sing in tune, right? Because it forms the pitches. And your right hand serves as a kind of metronome to keep you in sync. So you can sing in tune and play in sync. That's what it's there for, right? Otherwise, you need an accompanist, or you need a conductor, or, you need something. But I guess to reframe the question, maybe that will get them to stop thinking, what strum pattern? Okay.
I again, when I teach beginners, I say that the three things that I'm teaching. First is that, second is that, and third is this. You're learning three parts of your body, and this one is the most important. And ukulele culture doesn't, I guess it obscures our ability to listen because you're just listening to the blancmange. And I know the hardest thing to teach is strumming, because I'm right-handed and I picked up a guitar the wrong way when I was a kid. And so I don't know if I'm reversed around, but this is my right hand. And I thought, this is the hardest thing to do. Fretting is the hardest thing to do as a kid. And I haven't changed it. So I've hamstrung myself. And I'm an okay performer and player and good teacher, but I'm never going to be, Benny Chong or, anybody really amazing, because I've picked up the instrument the wrong way around. It's the strumming, and that's the great benefit of doing ukulele in groups is you're teaching them to feel. And it's actually in our book as well that we're teaching. I think the person who we wrote, who helped write some of our ucastration manual, is like, I think there's about 10 different skills, or maybe it's a dozen skills that we're teaching. And one of them is body. One of them is, how do you feel this music, and then how does it express in your rhythm? And yeah, and so that's, you know, that's about dancing. Yeah, anyhow, I could go on.
So yeah, I mean, just to take the Three Little Birds example again, there are people who they'll metronome their strum. They'll, don't worry about a thing, and that's useless if you want to play music. If you want to feel the music, it's accurate. They're keeping the rhythm. And the thing I learned is that when I was a new player, I had to learn a complicated Hawaiian strum that required me to use my finger and my thumb. And the guy who was running the group I was in would not let me play it any other way. I had to go up, down, up, like this. And I had to use my thumb and finger to do it. And it took me a year to master it, but once I did, I never had to talk to my right hand again. Never. I have not had to talk to my right hand since then. I can pick up the instrument now and play whatever feels like the rhythm of that song to me without having to say, okay, right hand, you have to do this. This is the mechanic of this strum. Because the process of learning how to do that strum required my hand to figure out what the rhythm of the song was I was playing it in. And it developed its own brain about that.
When you said you practiced it for a year, was it you practiced that song for a year, or you practiced specific exercises?
I practiced that strum. I did it slow. It was like, how does it work? It's finger up, finger down, finger up, finger down, thumb up, finger down. So it goes like this. And it sounds like this.
It's
and
the
it's actually
basis
based,
of the triple strum, isn't it?
It's based on triplets, yeah. It's like this with the middle note of the every other triplet missing. And so I did that for a long time so I could cement the sound in my head. And then it was just the mechanics, teaching my hand when the thumb had to flick up and when it didn't. Because it only flicks up every other time.
Yes.
Once I did that, though, I developed this relationship between my brain and my right hand that just kind of absorbed the rhythm of a song and allowed me to figure out, without having to say to myself, okay, this is where you have to flick this is where you have to flick that. It just sort of happened. But it took a long time to get the mechanics of the strum down. So I spent a lot of time just saying, finger up, finger down, flick your thumb, finger up, finger down, don't flick your thumb this time, finger up, finger down. And I did that slowly, and then I would do it a little faster, and eventually I got it. But, you know, teaching people rhythm beyond the metronome of the song is really hard.
That's an additional 3 things that I say. Yeah, the metronome, it will keep you in tempo, but it will not teach you rhythm. And you've just described what I call the 3 learnings, the 3 stages. Can you understand me? Do you understand the written sheet that I've given you, or do you understand what I'm saying to you? That's the first step. The second step is, can you get, and this is particularly the case for older people, can you get the instructions from your brain that you understand, from your brain to your fingers? And then the third step is the one that you described, Mark, that you get it automatic. And I can't help you with that. You need to work on that. You need to get it automated. And that just comes through playing lots.
Well, when I teach Hawaiian strums, the first thing I do is ask them to turn their ukuleles over so that the back is facing out, and I ask them to tap out the strum on the back of the ukulele, because I want them to know what it sounds like. So this strum sounds like this. This is your goal. And until they feel that, they're not going to learn to play it, even if they get the mechanics of it. And I do that with every strum that I show somebody. So when someone comes up to me and says, "What's the strum for Three Little Birds?" I sing the song. Don't worry. And where do you feel like tapping? Don't worry
Right.
about a thing. Does this sound right? Don't worry about a thing. That's not the feel of the song. It's accurate, right? You're keeping tempo, and you're doing, you're being a metronome. But if all ukulele players did was be metronomes, they could use metronomes instead of ukuleles.
Yeah. You're not playing music, are you, really?
No, you're counting, and there's a value in that. You need to do that in your head. But getting the rhythm of the song means feeling the feel of the song. And the only way that I've ever figured out to help people with that is to play the song with them and tap it out while we're playing it.
Yeah,
I'm going to go, guys.
I do
I'm
think
going to say bye-bye.
I do think metronome is
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you guys,
Sorry,
too.
see
I'll see you next month.
Yeah. See you.
bye, Mark. Thanks.
I do think metronome is, it's about listening as well, and that's, the first time I bought one, I was playing in a band, and I went away and practiced with it for a week, and I came back and I realised how bad our drummer was, because I suddenly was really listening to him, and I think it's that's one of the key skills that it does help, and that's really relevant to and I often, if it's a rhythm, I'll just say learn the rhythm, but just know where those metronomes with the different sounding beat, the beginning and the bar, those are really good because they work on the rhythm, and if it doesn't quite work, just kind of stretch it or condense it till it fits in, so you know that each time where you're playing, you're on the. So there's only one thing to think about then, just get it on the first beat.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think it's a great foundation for rhythm. You need to know 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you don't know that, you're going to run through stop signs, you're going to run through rests, you're going to overhold notes or underhold notes, or sing it the way you think you heard it when you were 16 and not the way it's written and actually played. But once you do that, what I tell people, what happened to me is that, and I don't know how to explain how for them to do this, but what happened to me was that I eventually put that metronome in my head. It's always there. Even when I'm, doing syncopation, in my head I'm going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And I couldn't do syncopated beats, or I couldn't do reggae beats if that weren't happening in my head. So it's really, you're right, Lindsay, it's really important to get that ingrained. Once you do that, and probably not until you do that, then you can start playing with rhythms and realize that sometimes rhythm means playing on the upbeat instead of the downbeat, or skipping a couple of half beats. And you can't do that without the foundation of knowing where the beat is.
There must be studies that show people who started quite early dancing, maybe even sports, are better with rhythm. Yeah. Because if you're not exposed to that, kind of like if you never sang growing up, it's really hard. And now people have time much later in life, but they don't have these basics. So my question is, I would love to see a kind of a hierarchy, a pecking order, what Lindsay was doing. First do this 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you get harder and harder, right? Like the triplet strums, I would say quite high, quite farther down the list. And then the different textures like muting, the chuck strums, and it gets further, the rasciado strums and the flamenco stuff would be harder and harder. But how long do they stay in the easy strum? How long do they stay just doing the down strum, just doing the unsyncopated down, up, down, up? When do you start introducing accents and muting and offbeat strumming?
I was sitting today next to a woman who actually I know from work, who decided she's a new ukulele player, brand new, has never played anything, doesn't know how to play a C chord. And I realized this, she decided to come out and sit with us and play the C chord whenever it showed up in a song, and sit and wait for it to come back. And I realized that when you're that new, you're learning about 12 things at once. You're learning how to look at sheet music and interpret it. You're learning how to sing and play at the same time. You're learning how to fret. You're learning how to strum. You're learning how to do them both at the same time. You're learning how to count to 4 if you've never had previous. And there's just all these things that you have to learn how to do. And I felt really bad for her because she has no previous music experience and was being thrown into people playing songs all around her. And I at one point I turned to her and said, you know, you're trying to learn 12 things at once. At any given time, pick one and focus on that one and forget about everything else. If it's singing along, sing. If it's learning how to follow the music, don't do anything else. One of the values of playing the C chord when it comes along and being quiet when it isn't is it teaches you how to follow the sheet music. So do one thing at a time. And then when you can do a couple of those things together, introduce additional things. And I think rhythm, you know, counting to 4 is essential and it's one of those 12 things. But I think rhythm comes later.
I don't know. I feel like rhythm should be first. It should be the most important thing.
Well, you know, maybe it is. I told her that one of the things she should do as a way of just getting a sense of what a song sounds like is if she couldn't play the chords to mute her strings and just... And she could be a percussion instrument, which is essentially what an ukulele is. And she could do that, or she could, for a reggae song, and just play with different things. But I also realized that, you know, as somebody who wants to be in a group and be able to sing and play rudimentary chords and do all that stuff at once, the more complex rhythms, like learning how to play triplets, might be something that you don't do right away.
No, but I also have to say, I remember when I first started learning to play the ukulele, and I saw a song sheet for the first time in class. I was horrified. It's like, I don't know this song. How am I supposed to know what to do just looking at a song sheet? So, you know, every single song sheet, I would find the original sheet music for it. So my binder was like 5 times thicker than everybody else's because I had to find the sheet music, the piano music, the score. Otherwise, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know the songs, that must be quite an experience to figure out what to do.
Well, I will say that one of the benefits of the daily ukulele book is that it is traditionally notated. So there is
the lead sheet,
it is sheet
yeah.
music. It has the melody line. And, you know, for people who don't know anything about music, they don't know how to read it. I think it's a great thing to learn how to read it. I think it's, even if you don't read music, you can appreciate the sheet music for the note values, right? You may not know that that notation there is an A and then one next to it is on a different line and it's an E, but you do learn from visually that, oh, that's a half note. I hold that what's it called? That tone. I hold that tone out for 2 beats. I hold this tone out for half a beat. And so that's a valuable thing too.
So I'm curious, Lindsay and Mark, do you advise people to constantly go up and down with your right hand rather than wait and then play when you need to?
The way I was taught, because you know, I was from sort of rock or pop guitar, it's up and down all the time, and then you're putting the rhythms in. Sometimes you don't do that in actual fact, but that's what I was taught was the best way to do it. So you continue using up and down moves, and then you're playing the chords when you need them, and you're missing. So I still do that a lot, but I mean, certain rhythms you can't, but or you instinctively you don't. But certainly, yeah, that's what I was taught.
That's how I learned as well.
Yeah.
You know, the idea was that you always went down, up, down, up. You were counting every half beat.
Yeah.
With your hand. And then the first big challenge for me was learning when to not hit the notes when you were making your pass by.
Yeah.
And then you know, the thing is that once that stuff becomes ingrained, you can improvise. You can play around with it. And when you're a brand new player like the woman sitting next to me today, and you're sitting next to me who's been playing for 12 years now, and is not a great player but is a good enough player to improvise, it must be intimidating to see somebody not doing the, wait, you're not going just down, up, down, up, down, up. But you can't get to the next step until you master that.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree because I have to preach what I teach, but you know, I don't need to do that because I can feel it. I can feel when I need to do it. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's good. All right. Well, I don't know if Lan's gonna get in, but maybe we could propose what we want to do next time. I'll just
So
pause
can
a little bit.
just out of interest, that
Sorry.
how essential do you think? I mean, what's your view on sort of tablature and notation? Do you think they're absolutely? Because I've had a query through the exam board about someone who's complaining that some of the stuff isn't written in tablature because I was trying to push them to do standard notation. But do you think most ukulele players don't need to learn notation? I mean, I think they need to learn if they want to be musicians, but or am I being too? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Somebody posted on Facebook a quote from a professional musician about tablature. I think she was a bass player, and she basically said tabs are bullshit. You know, you need to be able to feel this.
Yeah.
You know, you need to know the fretboard,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you need to be able to see an A on the sheet music and know where that A is on your fretboard instead of being told that it's the third string, the second
Yeah.
fret, or whatever.
Yeah.
And this led to this massive discussion. If I can find it, I'll post it on our
Oh, yeah.
Facebook page. This massive discussion about the merits and value of tabs. And one of the things that's happened in tablature is that it's evolved to the point where people can now write tabs and add values to the tabs, so that you know that when you play the fifth string of the third fret, you hold on to it for 2 beats instead of just not knowing. Because the big problem with traditional tabs is that it doesn't tell you what the melody is.
Yeah.
It just tells you this succession of notes, but it doesn't give you the note values. So this turned into this massive discussion. It's easier for me. I played clarinet for 9 years,
Yeah.
so I can read sheet music. But it's actually easier for me when I'm playing the ukulele to read tabs.
Especially if it's a high G ukulele.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what I do think there's some value, but I have like 6 or 7-year-old children that you can they'll be looking at a piece of notated music and they'll have fun trying to figure out, am I going to play the G on the open string, or am I going to play it here, and they actually like the challenge of that. And I think, well, if they can learn to do it, surely it might take longer, it can't be intrinsically that difficult to do. It's interesting. The whole debate over tablature and notation is a discussion itself, really, isn't it?
I think it's kind of like I did an exercise with my students in my I taught how to memorize songs workshop. Basically, I showed them chord names without any chord diagrams, and previously I would always have chord diagrams, and they were surprised that they knew the chords.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So same thing. I think for me, I was playing from tabs for classical guitar. And then one day, I just looked at the notes and then I didn't need the tabs.
Yes.
It was this
Yeah.
flip, you know?
Yeah.
So I wonder whether it's the same with for ukulele players reading tabs. After a while, maybe one day you could just introduce notes or take it away, take
Yes.
away the tabs, leave the notes there. And
Well,
see if can flip.
they both require the same principle of learning, which is you see this on a page and you see A on a page and your finger does B. When I see this, my finger does that. And so when I see a 5 on the C string on a tab, my finger knows to go to the 5th fret of the C string. But it could also learn to do that by seeing the note that fret represents. So when I see an A note, I know that that's an open A string. When I see a C note, I know where to find that. It's just a matter of when you see this, your finger does that. And it's the same principle whether you see a number on a line or a circle on or between a line.
Particularly because if now that's just, with tablature, with rhythms being written on anyway, that's I mean, that's a transferable skill. You can apply it to standard notation. But if you're going to learn that anyway, that's half of standard notation learn. How to represent rhythms. Then it's just a case of knowing where to find the pitches. Really, it's
Well, the
it's
teaching of reading notation and playing on the ukulele. I mean, would you say start the first position? Once you get really good at it, then move on to the fourth position or fifth position and keep going like that. How would you teach notation?
I start off just with the open strings, because that's then they can they've only got to memorize 4 positions, and then they can read. There's a good book actually I meant to mention before that someone I know wrote. It's called Hugh. There's a guy called Hugh Boyd, and he wrote this book called Rainbow Ukulele. Basically, what it does is he uses colours for each string, but it's not colour strings. It's his own way. It's his own handbook, and then, like, for example, if you're playing a C, it's red, and then later on as you add other notes, you have a D, but it's still red because it's on the same string, and that's a really useful book. I found that good. And a lot of his students, when we started talking about the exams and stuff, he said, because I put the reading it using standard notation, I've made the pieces slightly less challenging, working on the basis that reading notation is a challenge for a lot of people. And he said, but his students actually found it easier. So it's a good book. It's worth looking out for to read.
Rainbow Ukulele. Is that a UK publication?
It is, yeah. It's a really tiny company, Ringing Strings Productions, or Ringing Strings Publications, and the man that wrote it is his sort of like a one-man band. He's called Hugh Boyd.
BOYD?
BOYDE, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's
BOYD.
HUGH, the Welsh way of spelling it.
HUGH, yeah.
Yeah, Hugh Boyd. But I found that really good for teaching beginners to read.
One of the things that I was a clarinet player, so when I would see an A on a traditional notation, I knew what to do with my fingers on the clarinet.
Yes, yeah.
After learning what the open strings look like in notation, the thing that helped me the most was learning the C scale.
Yes, yeah.
Because I could see the notes in traditional notation on the C scale and then associate specific frets with each one.
Yes, yeah.
And I was in this Hawaiian music class where, as part of the warm-up, he would go through the C scale slowly, and then he would go through it. We would go increasingly fast. And it was a finger dexterity exercise,
yes.
But it was also a muscle memory exercise. When I see that thing on the page, my middle finger knows to do this, or my pinky knows to do that.
Yeah.
Actually, that's another topic I wanted to talk about, but I think we're running out of time, which is muscle memory. Yeah, I teach in boot camp, I teach what's it called, the 20% that you need to do the 80% you want, the Pareto Principle, right? And so those are, be very selective about which chords, and then which strums and which strum patterns, just do that, and then you could conquer the majority. Yeah.
What's that called? What principle?
The Pareto Principle. I'll type it in here. So basically, it started with, I think in Italy, they found that 80% of the wealth was in the hands of 20% of the people.
All right.
But it actually doesn't have to be this 20-80 rule. It could be, 10-90, 30-70. And the second thing is, it doesn't have to add up to 100. You could say, 30% of the people own half of the wealth, or,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
you wear only, 5% of what's in your closet.
So the principle in ukulele is that if you learn 20% of what you need to know, you can do 80% of what you'll be asked to do.
Right, or what you
Something like
want,
that.
songs, so this applies to chord progressions, like common chord progressions, songs. So most of us just do 4/4 time, 3/4 time. That's good enough. It'll take care of the 6/8, the 5/8, the whatever, because those are so rare. And if we could practice those most of the time, our fretting hand will have the muscle memory to know how to switch between chords, right? And the same thing with note reading. We just know instantly. We see those notes. We know what to do on our left hand. Yeah.
One of my hobbies is learning to read Egyptian hieroglyphs, and there's about 6,000. And so I always tell my students that an ancient Egyptian scribe would have to learn somewhere in the region of 6,000 symbols, and you only need to learn 48 positions of the notes on the ukulele. Ukulele easy, really.
Yeah, well, this goes to language as well. We have 26 letters in the alphabet. It's like a jigsaw
Yes,
puzzle
yes.
to put together words, right? But my mother
Yes,
tongue,
yeah.
my first language is Chinese. So we just memorize it. There's no other way. You have to memorize all these characters, all these pictures, and then you
Yeah.
put them together. So,
Yes, yeah.
all right, go ahead,
So I
Lindsay.
was talking a topic about characters, but that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's
6,000
right.
hieroglyphs. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So let me just announce our next meeting is the third Saturday in July, and then we would have been meeting for 12 consecutive months, every month. And shall we choose a topic? Let me pause recording. Hello, so we will meet next time, July 17th, Saturday, same time as before, 5 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, which is 10 o'clock British Standard Time, and that's 2 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. And we're going to do a poll in our Facebook group page, Ukulele Instructors International, about what topic will be. And we will not meet in August. We're going to take a break. So thank you for watching.